been a while. Hello, everybody. This is Heretical Weekends number 46. I am Mischievous Heathen, joined by my compadres Gabaguy and Turtle. How are
Hello.
you folks been?
Good.
Been good. It's been a
Good.
while.
It's been a while. You have to sing it, or it just doesn't work.
I don't know how this song would go.
Turtle, you're a talented guy.
Yeah, the more talent you have, the more songs you know.
you have your guitar handy, right? So you're supposed to bring us in with a tune.
I think you already did. I think you got that covered. So
Nice. So on today's show, we're talking about our experiences with believers. Um, our interactions. Is it difficult? What kind of our personal take is on it? But these are mostly stories that I think Gabaguy has that we are going to sort of unpack. I have some things, but generally speaking, I think Gabaguy is going to steer the ship for this show. So, without anything else, let's get started.
Sure.
What do you got for us this week, Gabby?
So I think maybe I didn't. I can't recall if I mentioned this guy. Okay. We'll start with the closer relationships. So
Gabaguy, smooth as always. You silver-tongued devil, you.
I think it'll have a natural progression this way. So about a month ago now, I had the opportunity to go down and visit with my dad for a little while. Our grandfather passed away.
Oh.
Yeah, sad, but he was 98 years old, and
oh shit.
Yeah, and
good for him.
It wasn't unexpected, but so anyhow, I got to go down and visit with my dad. He's been and when I say down, he's been in Florida, doing some work with a church down there or whatever. So on our visit, and we were doing some traveling around the state, visiting some other relatives, and we went to go see the cemetery where our grandfather will be, his remains will be laid to rest, I guess is the way to say that. But so we had at one time we had, I think, like a 3-hour drive, and and on the drive, I've had conversations with our father in the past about religion and things, and we've talked about, at least the last conversation that I'd had when I went to visit him in Wisconsin. And that conversation was just whether or not you can choose beliefs. I thought I would, kind of chop away at something that was kind of low-hanging fruit, and something that wasn't like necessarily worldview altering to kind of come to grips with. And we didn't come to a hard and fast conclusion, which wasn't what I expected in that conversation. But I think it got him thinking a little bit, and I think he did have to concede that in the vast majority of cases, we aren't able to choose what we want to, what we believe or what we don't believe, and we're just persuaded one way or another. Which that's what I was going for, and
so you got him to concede that beliefs are a state of being convinced or not convinced.
Well,
right.
he tried to kind of carve out a space for essentially supernatural beliefs, and say that those were different than facts about reality or facts about the world. And yeah, go ahead.
I'll say, but either way, it's a state of being convinced, right? So even if he has beliefs in the supernatural, on some level, he's convinced that they exist, regardless of evidence or anything else. It's just this, in my viewpoint, isn't beliefs just a state of believing or not believing?
I think his view of it was, well, you can't go out and prove or disprove the existence of supernatural stuff, whatever it might be, and that because of that, you can just decide to believe or not to believe, and whatever. And I pushed him on that a little bit because I think you're right that one way or another we're still either persuaded that it's true or we're not.
Right.
And we can be persuaded for good reasons or bad reasons. Blah,
Sure.
blah, blah.
Sure.
But
if I can just jump in here quickly. Gavagai and I've actually had a little bit of conversation about this in the past, because this was something that he had been meaning to kind of bring up with our dad. And I think the problem is that that's ground that a believer, especially a certain breed of believer, really doesn't want to give up, because that's really important to their idea of justice.
Yeah.
And explaining why it's okay for non-believers to, essentially be punished forever. So if you take away that that choice, that making that believing a choice, if you take that away, that really lays waste to their ability to justify heaven and hell type scenario.
So if I'm reading you correctly, it kind of takes away that aspect where they say, well, you have that free will to choose or not choose to believe, right? So
yeah,
right.
Okay.
And then if you say, well, I in a broader sense, we really don't, then then the question, like, it becomes obvious that the problem then is, well, then why would a just God send somebody to hell? And that is, obviously firmly implanted in their belief system. So that's I think that's the hurdle that you ultimately have to, and that's why our dad wants to hold on to that space for supernatural beliefs, because that's important for him.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And as a note, and something that we can just kind of bracket for now, but later in one of the other conversations that I come up with or we'll discuss, when you move into believers who have more of a Calvinist type base for their theology and doctrine, that's less of an issue, because they don't necessarily believe that belief is a choice, and they would hold things like that there's really not really free will or whatever with regard to salvation and things. So
aren't Calvinists the ones that believe that you're already pre-elected to go to heaven?
Yeah.
No matter what. So either way, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Okay. So even they necessarily could be going to hell, even though they believe, because because the elect are preordained, right?
Well, yeah, except that it
I'd
gets
assume
weird.
that they think each Calvinist thinks that they are part of the elect. I would assume.
Well, of course, everyone wants to be with the cool kid.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not that familiar with Calvinists, but I'd assume.
Yeah, and our kind of family and church background leans towards what's known as the Arminian tradition or whatever, where you have free will, and so hence our dad's kind of predisposition toward that kind of mind frame or whatever.
Gotcha. Okay, so you guys are going to Florida.
Yeah, well, we're driving around in Florida, and
Okay.
on this particularly long trip, there was a lull in the conversation. We
Mhm.
both play pickleball, and so that takes up a good portion of the kinds of things that we can talk about. At least we have that.
Why wouldn't it?
Right.
Pickleball.
So, but he at one point, like I said, there's a lull in the conversation, and I looked over at him and I said, "Well, would you like to have an awkward conversation about religion?"
Nice.
Which
that was smooth.
I find really entertaining, and if you know our dad, the answer is obviously going to be a no, and it was. But I thought I'd throw it out there, and I said, "Well, anytime you're interested, I'm game." And he said, "Oh, I know you are." So, somewhat disappointed though, I said, "Well, I don't remember exactly how it came about, but he suggested that I talk to our uncle, and 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 then the other option he suggested was this family friend of ours, who we'll call Uncle. We can just call him Wes because I don't think that matters too much. And then the other person we'll call Mr. D. Is that sufficient, Turtle?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So
It sounds like a gay buddy porno movie.
Mr. D, Wes and Mr. D. So, and I've had some conversations with our uncle in the past, and he is, I think he's kind of a wannabe preacher. He goes to the nursing home where his mom and our grandmother live, and he'll preach sermons. I don't know if he goes every Sunday, but he goes maybe like once a month at least, I think, and preach sermons. And
let me ask you a couple of questions. So, yeah. I mean, is this your uncle the same age as your dad? I mean, I know he's your uncle, or your dad's brother, but sometimes there's a gap there. Is he younger, older guy?
Roughly the same age.
All right. Yeah, has he been doing this for a long time? Like, has he always been super religious, or has he always been kind of preachy, or like
he's always been religious. I mean, he and our dad were both. You're talking about Wes, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he and our dad were both deacons in the church, so they were, kind of they were on the church board and served together there. Our aunt, his wife, was
Sunday school teacher. And...
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
And ran. I think she ran like the girls program. It's kind of like the Girl Scouts, only with super Christian themed.
That sounds like a fucking party.
Pioneer Girls is what it was called, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yikes. All right. So how did things go with Uncle Wes? Like, how did that? What did you decide to talk about with him, and how did you bring that about?
Yeah. Well, so I didn't really even pursue it after that until Uncle Wes sent me this cheesy email forward about how Chickfila is great because
I got that too.
No.
Did you? Yeah. You do.
Anytime, that's the thing I would say about our uncle is, I mean, it's hard to say because when I was younger, I didn't really. I mean, there wasn't email but but even beyond that, I didn't like. I feel like our uncle has kind of turned into, that kind of uncle over the years, and I kind of separated myself from our family for a long time, and then I kind of got immersed in it, and I feel like he's significantly different.
I would say that's fair.
In terms of he is now the kind of uncle who will kind of just say things or put out these very political, often religious
and polarizing even among Christians, because we've got a brother-in-law who's a pastor, and he's not, he was a biology major in college before he decided he wanted to go into the ministry. And
what?
Yeah, and
he's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a real good guy. And he's not a young Earth creationist by any stretch. And believes in an old Earth and believes in evolution and things. Well, our uncle will toss out these, creationist grenades into conversations, and at events where those kinds of things should be avoided for the sake of harmony and peace, right? And so the rest of us are just there going.
Give us and everyone listening a example of a creationist grenade.
Well, I won't be able to remember it exactly, but so our mom died about 2 years ago, and afterwards, there's a lot of getting together with family members and stuff like that. I don't remember what the context. I think it was just kind of out of nowhere, but and maybe you'll remember, Gavagai, but just there's a bunch of us kind of sitting around in my dad's living room, and our sisters' families, and our Gavagai's son, and
Yeah.
my girlfriend, and then like a couple of cousins are all just kind of like hanging around, and he just said something about evolution, emphasis
No.
on evil, and then
Not that old trope.
yeah, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but then he just kind of like started talking about how there, it's just some kind of weird, unbased in reality criticism of something about like how it's always changing, or something
Yeah.
like that. How they can't make up their minds on whatever. But just kind of like out of left field, and then like nobody's
Right.
really saying anything.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was the very
Gotcha.
same situation that I was kind of referencing there, and but he's done things like that in the past too, and he also likes to kind of brand himself as the science guy.
Yeah.
He was a engineer by trade, and and I'm sure studied science in college. He's got a degree and um, whatever. But
But
He'll
okay,
pull
so
out like sometimes nothing related to religion or anything, but just like what he deems as interesting uh,
yeah,
facts and tidbits and stuff like that, and tell you like it's the most amazing thing.
I'm kind of getting the impression that he values his opinion, or at least the things he finds interesting. I mean, you know what
yeah,
I mean? Like there are people that I'm that way too in certain situations where it's like I I say something either just that's out there, or either to get a reaction, or that's quasi controversial because I just find it to be interesting, assuming kind of everyone else will. Is it that kind of thing?
well, yeah. I mean, he likes to talk, and he's a people guy. Um,
Gotcha.
so I don't know. I hate
So,
to paint him in a too negatively, negative a picture. He's a nice guy. He'll go out of his way to give people a hand and things and
I'm not saying anything
whatever.
negative. I
But
was just curious. So
yeah,
so what did you guys talk about?
well, so he sent this email about
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A, right?
Oh yeah, Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, and it was. I'm trying to look for it, and I can't find it in my inbox or
Maybe I
whatever.
can
The
find it while you're talking.
origin, whatever. But it's basically what they were saying is Chick-fil-A is nice because there was this occasion when there was a blizzard and people got stuck, in their vehicles or whatever, and they people at this one Chick-fil-A restaurant brought them chicken, and the subject line was chicken in a blizzard, and just how great they were. And so my reply to him was something along the lines of, well, I'm it's nice that they helped people, in that circumstance, or at least that people who worked at one store did something nice for people. I said, but it's we can take the good and the bad of any organization or institution, and be praise the good and criticize the bad, and say it's not good that they have fought against
Abortion.
civil rights and whatever. Yeah, these things. I didn't say abortion. I didn't want to get into that with him, but and the just gay rights and things like that. And he replied back something like, well, do you think that, or do you expect Yahweh to apologize or something for Sodom and Gomorrah? and so I replied back something like, no, I don't expect Yahweh to apologize any more than I expect Zeus or Thor for zapping people with lightning bolts, or for Poseidon to apologize for killing people with earthquakes or tsunamis and things. And I said, I don't think that your God is real. I don't think that Sodom and Gomorrah was real, and whatever. So
I mean, that's just to jump in real quick. That's such a frustrating starting point when you're talking
yeah,
to somebody who doesn't take into consideration that you don't hold the same point of view as them. Like,
I don't know if he can wrap his head around that.
yeah,
To see it from someone else's viewpoint.
right.
But which is the reason that I hurled out my, I'll admit those were, not, I could have approached that in a more delicate way,
Well,
without throwing it in his face that I don't think that his God is any more real than any of the other gods that have been proposed.
But that's a tough thing to do, because that's such a sensitive thing that they need. Like,
Yeah.
they need to have people believe that they believe this, or like, to have it compared with something that is obviously fake, which is the issue, is a problem for them. And it's like, all this talk about people being snowflakes and whatever. It's like, the people who are the most sensitive are the people. I mean, I don't know that our uncle has ever called anybody a snowflake, but
No.
of that mindset.
Right.
Well, Turtle, you bring up a good point. So I find that people that have been indoctrinated very early or raised to believe, especially people that are a generation probably above ours, a little on the older side, they have a hard time grasping the concept that unbelief or not having a religion is a perfectly fine worldview to have.
Or even possible.
Yeah, even exactly.
That's the thing, is a lot of them just think, oh, everybody's got this written on their heart.
Well, no, okay. So I'll put it to so I have an ex-girlfriend whose mother I still speak to semi-regularly, right? Because we're still friendly, and she's always interested in my positions and stuff like that. But for her, I mean, we'll have a conversation and she'll say how much I make sense in this and that, and then if you talk to her 5 minutes later, she believes in magic again. So their family believes in everything, like psychics, crystals, auras, karma, magic, gods, witchcraft, everything. Everything is real to them. So whenever we speak, she'll say, this was a very interesting conversation. I can't wait to have one again. Okay, fine. I'm up for speaking, to somebody about whatever. But then she'll say something like, okay, I can't wait for you to share your faith with me again. And I was like, and I can't, I've told her a million times, I'm like, I don't have a faith. I don't have a religion. My position is exactly the opposite of that. There is none there. And then so she'll be, oh, okay, yeah, okay, I got you, this and that. And then a month later, oh yeah, it was real nice to talk about your faith. I was like, she can't.
You think she's doing it just to yank your chain? Or?
No, I swear to you, she's not. I swear to you, because her daughter, which I dated for a very long time, is the same way. My ex-girlfriend, she has a very hard time not holding the position that no supernatural positions, right? So when I met her, she was a Seventh-day Adventist, right, or was formerly, right, which they're fucking nuts. And then she was kind of like a quasi-regular, what I say, a part-timer Christian, where it's like, I believe in God and this, but they don't go to church or anything, but they believe in shit or claim to. So there was a time where we had a conversation, and she sort of like let go of the Christianity part, and she started hanging out with a bunch of science dudes, right? Who had a weekly thing on science, and they would discuss atheism, scientific things, Jesus' resurrection, mysticism, and all that other stuff, right? So she was kind of falling into that, which is fine, whatever. But I realized is that she has to trade in one belief system for what she thought was another belief system, right? So then after she got dissuaded from that, she started getting into like yoga, and that's when she got into like chakras and psychic powers and shit like that. And then I realized she cannot not have a supernatural belief position, right? Her feeling has always been there has to be something there. And so the more I talked to her mom, the more I realized that they had raised her in a way where not having a belief is impossible to them.
Yeah.
Like, and it's a scary position to have, to me, to where you can't even comprehend someone not having some sort of like magical thinking, you know? So
Right.
anyway, that was to the turtles point, but okay, back to you and Uncle Wes.
Yeah.
So how did that go?
Well, so I said at one point, we shot back and forth a couple of times, and I told him that, about the conversation that I'd had with my dad, and that, he suggested or recommended that I turn to Wes and Mr. D. At which point, then I think shortly thereafter, Wes copied Mr. D on our communication.
Oh, so you're getting tag teamed.
So, well, but no, because their approaches are just night and day, and Wes's approach is just preach, and I can't find copies. I thought I put them in a folder, but now I can't find the copies of the communications that I just had with Wes, which is frustrating. But it was very typical apologist kind of stuff, and one of the things that he pointed to was the fact that people have been willing to die for the gospel, and our aunt shot something to me with the same kind of thing, and so I'll shoot back. They've kind of died out of the conversation, both of them. I replied to our aunt, and and Wes both, with examples, of people that were willing to die for stupid things that we, all of us would grant are were not true. Yeah. And
what does dying for the quote unquote the gospel have to do with the truth of the gospel itself?
Well,
Yeah.
the implication is that why would somebody, like, if the disciples in particular, if these guys who were there, if they're willing to die for this, for what they're saying, that implies to the Christians, and I think that it's a reasonable thing to think, is that if let's say the three of us, we make up a religion, and then it comes to the point where we have to either deny that this religion is true, or we have to die. If we're willing to die for it, that makes it easier to believe that we're telling the truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. It's fine that they believe that, but what does that have to do with it being actually true?
Right.
Is my point. Like,
Yeah.
It doesn't say anything to the truth of the claim. It just means that they got guys that believe. So
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, the further away you get from the quote unquote events, the easier it is to be like, okay, well, they believed this was true, but they weren't really there, and whatnot. But if you have these supposed eyewitnesses to all these events, that seems to give it more credibility.
Yeah. And from in their mind, the gospel accounts were all written by these eyewitnesses,
Mm-hmm.
which is clearly not true when you look at the timelines and things, and
Right.
the fact that they're not actually even signed or make any kind of first person claims about.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is
Whatever.
they all talk about all of the disciples in third person.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
John never calls, the book of John never refers to the disciple John as me or I.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So sorry, I didn't mean to tangent there, Gabby.
No, that's okay. And but I pointed out, like one of the examples that I always give when somebody raises this is like the Heaven's Gates cult that like castrated themselves and committed mass suicide because they thought that the Comet Hale-Bopp that passed by Earth in the 90s had a spaceship hidden in its tail.
Mm-hmm.
and that by sacrificing themselves or just committing suicide, that they would be able to hitch a ride and whatever. Well, their willingness to die for that belief doesn't mean that the belief is more credible. It just means that they have their confidence in the belief was really high.
Right.
So, and that's what I said. I said, don't you think that this is a measure of somebody's confidence, not a measure of whether or not the belief is true? And and he kind of somewhat acknowledged that in one of the communications, but since then his communication has dropped off. And I even tried to send a response asking for just general, because they went on like a vacation for a little while, and so I in an attempt to make friendly, I said, so were you guys back from your vacation? How'd it go? And haven't heard anything back from them. So I don't know if if I annoyed them to the point that I don't. I think they'll be cordial and friendly when when and if we encounter each other again in person. But
you've been blackballed.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is, a lot of these people just surround themselves with people who agree with them and never venture out into the realm of disagreement, and so they think they have these airtight claims and statements, and then they don't quite work out that way.
Right.
I'm not sure how things are, if it's different in different parts of the country, but out here in California, where everything is, I mean, I'm a liberal, but everything is PC to the point where even I'm like, grow the fuck up. Anyway, but so my point is that everybody out here is like, they're like, yeah, like everyone can like believe what they want, and like everything is perfect, and like if you believe what you believe, I believe what I believe, that kind of thing. And it's like, and the one phrase that I hate the most. Well, there's many phrases I hate, but this is one of the top 5. Is, well, we'll just have to agree to disagree, and I fucking hate that statement. I fucking hate it. I hate it. And the reason I hate it is because it's for people that are just that they get to a point where they're like, you're having this discussion, kind of where Gavin Guy pointed out, something, and then they go, well, we'll just agree to disagree, and then because that's a way out of the conversation. And
to me, it kind of depends on where in the conversation that statement comes. Because if it's been going on and on and on and on, like I don't have a problem with that. But if it's like, hey, I think something, oh, I disagree with that. Well, we're gonna have to agree to disagree. Like if that's how it goes, then yeah, that's no good.
The problem that I have is when someone makes, like in Gavin Guy's situation where I've had those conversations, right? And then you point out something like, hey, this is a measure of the confidence of the claim, and not, of the truth value of the claim. And they go, well, we'll agree to disagree, even if you've gone back and forth a couple of times. So it's like, well, no, no, I'm not going to let you snake out of the conversation because your cognitive dissonance is like, me, level red, I'm like, it just annoys me. I'm sorry, I'm ranting, but that's pretty typical out here, because they assume out here questioning means you're saying it's wrong, right? Even though you could be wanting to have honest, inquiry, and have discussion, but you're not allowed to even ask questions.
Yeah.
And that they take it as like, if you're asking questions or if something doesn't make sense to you, even if you're not trying to provoke them or anything, they take it as some sort of offense, that even questioning the belief. Because out here, where things are very liberal, it's like, you can't question my belief because you're being closed-minded, and like, that kind of thing.
Well, I mean, that's the fundamental problem with supernatural beliefs, is that they are incredibly fragile things. So in polite society, we've just built barriers around that. So anybody who's poking their finger anywhere near that boundary line, it gets uncomfortable for those people.
I told you guys this story I had at my ex-girlfriend about positive energies, and like I asked what it was, and she got mad at me. Did I tell you guys that story?
I think so.
And so, yeah, I mean, well, here's another one. So we're walking along, and we're in this mall or outside mall, and there is like these group of teenagers, and they're in a circle, and they have their heads lowered, and I'm like, I kind of wasn't paying attention, so I kind of looked and said something smart ass, like, what the fuck are these goobers doing? Or something like that. And she goes, oh, it's a prayer circle, and I'm just like, oh, okay. I'm like, to what end? And she's like, they're just sending out like positive energies into the universe. And I'm like, what does that even mean? And she goes, well, there's like, it's just like positive like energies, like good vibes. I'm like, what? Like, I was like, okay, cool. Like,
how's that work?
How does that work? And then she got mad and she started getting, and it's like, well,
it doesn't, damn it.
Well, I wasn't even being a dick. I was like, that's great, but like, how does that work? And it's like, well, it just sends good vibes out there and makes everything more positive. I'm like, well, wouldn't them actually doing positive things create more positivity? I mean, right now, it just looks like they're talking to themselves in a little circle, and it looks like a football huddle. That's exactly what it looked like. A football huddle with like 12 people,
Uh-huh.
And then, but she gets mad, and it's like, well, if you can't, I mean, here's the part where people get annoyed with me is that I will generally, this is in my real life, right? One of the first questions I ask is my position of unbelief rational, or do you feel that it's rational? And I go, spoiler alert, if you say yes, then this conversation is going to be over really fast. But if you say no, right, then I'll
punch you.
Then I'll proceed. So no matter what the supernatural claim is, let's say it's God or let's say psychic powers or something, and I ask you what it is, and you cannot tell. I mean, I'm not asking you for like a fucking chart or whatever, like an atomic level breakdown. I'm asking you, can you describe to me what it is? Like when someone says God, right? They go, well, he's not this, he's not that, he's not, and that's great. But when you just say energy, what does that mean? Because energy is a very specific term, as far as I know. And so when you start asking questions, and I'm like, well, you don't know what it is, you can't tell me, but you're describing an effect of something that you basically can't formulate a description of, a coherent one anyway. Then how is my position not rational and not believing that or accepting that? You know what I mean? Like, but they get mad at me.
Yeah.
And then they go, well, let's agree to disagree. And then I go fuck yourself. And then the conversation's done. Sorry. Uncle Wes, let's get back to that guy.
No. I mean, that's pretty much on Uncle Wes, but I was hoping to transition to Mr. D.
Let's go into Mr. D because I talked to Mr. D too, right? At some point?
No.
Oh, that's not Mr. D?
So
okay.
That's not Mr. D.
Okay.
That is Mr. Temp.
Okay. On to Mr. D.
Yeah, I'm talking to all these people. So Mr. D is an old family friend and a genuinely good guy. He also served on the church board with our dad and Uncle Wes. But I'll say this: I think he is much more well read. Has had exposure to some kind of secular philosophy and probably a wider range of kind of worldviews. And I would say that might be true of our dad over Uncle Wes as well. And I don't know how Uncle Wes avoided that, being, he worked as an engineer in a pretty large company in Wisconsin. So, but just based on,
I would say that the thing about our dad versus Uncle Wes is our dad is more thoughtful about things and doesn't just necessarily push his opinions on other people, generally speaking.
Yeah. Well, and I think
Uncle Wes is kind of more like overconfident about things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think humility plays a part in it, and that our dad might be appeased as far as his own doubts by different arguments, but I don't think that he has the confidence or and I hesitate to use the word, but arrogance to throw them out like he's got all of the answers, and where Uncle Wes doesn't hesitate like that. He's confident, and then to the point where it's a detriment. Mr. D is very thoughtful and is introspective on a lot of these things, and our conversation has borne that out. He is the only person that I know of who is a fundamentalist Christian who was in past conversations I've mentioned John Rawls to him, and the oh shoot, now what's the
Veil of ignorance.
well, that's one of the concepts that Rawls puts out there, but the book about justice, justice is fairness, is one of the articles that he wrote around the time that he was writing his book. But anyhow, just the fact that he was familiar with Rawls, had read at least portions of the book, and knew the literature and things surrounding them, and knew even some of the criticisms of Rawls, was hugely impressive to me. That that he has had that kind of exposure and whatever. So as we've gone through, his approach has been to ask questions, which I also like, and I've been doing my best to answer. And we've had some exchanges where I asked for clarification on a point or two, and he provided that. I sent back. The last communication that I threw out there was a clarification on something that I said in reference to Occam's razor, and it was kind of a lengthy response, but I thought I'd share it because I think it's kind of fun. I gave 3 examples of where of kind of to expand on this idea of what was the phrase that I used with regard to Occam's razor? So Occam's razor is the kind of the law of parsimony, where a simpler explanation is preferred over a more complicated explanation, as kind of a rule of thumb. When everything else being equal, we're trying to distinguish between which solution or explanation of a given phenomenon is more likely to be right.
Yeah, isn't it kind of like the explanation with the least amount of assumptions?
Yeah.
There's another one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's another way to phrase it. So multiplication of entities involved in the explanation was the phrase that I used, and he said he wasn't sure exactly what I meant by that. So I gave 3 examples. Like, the first example was that I walk into my house after being away at work, and there is a throw pillow on the floor, and it is torn to shreds, and it's been disemboweled while I was at work. What are the possible explanations? And I said a dog, maybe a burglar, a house sprite, Shiva, the Hindu god of that's Shiva the destroyer, a witch, or pillow depression and suicide. And so I go through and talk about what makes any one or more of these.
Well, they all sound equally simple, because they all are just like a dog. Okay,
Right.
dog. Sheba. Okay, that's equal. They're equally likely because
Right.
they all just have one thing.
Simple explanation. Yeah. So, and I talk about there's this mountain of evidence that dogs exist, and that they go about this kind of behavior. And I talk
And
about
you own one.
And I own, well, but I said it, and we could even say it. Well, if I didn't own one, are there other things? And maybe a burglar broke in, but if there's nothing that broke in, at what point of my inability to explain how a pillow got torn up in my house or apartment or whatever, what have you, by means of a dog or a burglar or anything else that I can think of that's natural, when does a supernatural explanation become more plausible or more likely? And I kind of tossed that out there as a just a rhetorical question in the explanation. And then I went on to the motions of the planets, and how the heliocentric model was favored over the geocentric model for the fact that it just had essentially elliptical or circular motions of the planets without these loop-de-loops that were required for a geocentric, where the Earth is the center, in order to explain the observed motions of the planets. Both of them explained what was going on, but the loops was an extra added thing with no apparent underlying explanation for it, and it wasn't necessary under the heliocentric model. So, that was just another example of something that was added extra to explain under one framework, and then I used an example of Uncle Wes working as an engineer, and this was a story that he told us at some point. We were together with the family, and he was, kind of talking about problem solving as an engineer, and the company that he was working for was having problems with some mechanism, and I think it was like a conveyor belt system, and it was catching on fire, which people didn't like. So they went about the process of trying to determine what it was, and he didn't elaborate on what that all entailed when he was telling us the story, but it turned out that it was some kind of coating, like a lacquer or something that was on one of the parts, and that this was causing, I don't know if it was causing the heat, or if it was just the heat was causing it to catch fire and things and whatever.
Friction or something.
Yeah. So I said, what would it have been just as okay to say that chemistry was causing that lacquer to catch on fire, or maybe a ghost or something? When do we throw these things in? And even if you said, well, chemistry was responsible, why not say chemistry and magic? So and then I threw out this idea of the null hypothesis as this is happening, or this is not happening, as the null hypothesis, and how do we distinguish between those two potential things? And then the final thing that I said was, because I was the one that had been answering questions up to this point, so now it was my turn, and he had even said that he didn't mean to lead the whole conversation, and in the message just before this, he was saying that he felt like we were arriving at a point where he was obliged to kind of explain why it was that he felt that the Christian faith was true, or whatever, in light of all of the things that we've said. And it doesn't seem like he is a young Earth creationist, which is interesting, because Uncle Wes is on here, and he's still being copied on these messages back and forth between me and Mr. D. So,
like to your
D
point, real quick, a thought occurred to me as you're talking about the pillow being torn up. For all these people who want to bring forth like supernatural explanations, why don't we ever accept, or even, it's not even fathomable that we would have police saying, oh, this murder, it turns out this was a supernatural occurrence, this dead body that we found over here. No, we always expect them to be looking for a perpetrator, some sort of or if not a perpetrator, maybe it seems like there's a perpetrator, but there's some sort of natural explanation. We wouldn't accept if they said, oh, well, this actually turned out to be fairies. It looked like it was an axe murder, but it turns out this was the work of fairies' supernatural powers. And
it sounds really like a bad Will Smith movie. You know what I mean? Where like Men in Black, like they just, but it's like with supernatural things.
Yeah. But I mean,
this was obviously a werewolf,
right? So like we just wouldn't accept that, when it comes to something like that. But in other circumstances, well, it's a ghost that knocked over that book, or closed that door, or whatever.
That's the exact story one of my friends told me where she worked at. And I may have already mentioned this too in the past, but she worked as a server, and she was convinced the very old diner that she worked at was it's haunted because it's old, so obviously that means it's haunted, right? And in every other aspect, she seems, to be, a non-believer or whatever. But I'm just gonna chalk this up to, I don't know, whatever. But anyway, so she goes, I've experienced this thing where I was in the kitchen by myself, because it always happens when you're by yourself, right?
Right.
And one of the blenders fell off the shelf, and so that convinced her that there was a ghost of some sort. And I was like, she's like, well, was the shelf level? I mean, was it wet? I mean, did someone put it on there properly? Like, you know what I mean? There's a myriad of questions, And she was like, no, it was level, and it was sitting on there firmly, and there's no other
perfect memory of all the details.
There's no explanation other than. So I said, so in light of in light of Occam's razor, what's the more likely scenario that it fell due to someone not putting listen to things, or there's a disembodied spirit that inhabits that locale that likes to push blenders off of shelves.
Right.
It's like, why would it do? It doesn't make any sense. Like,
well, to be fair, he doesn't have to like pushing it. Maybe he's just clumsy.
He just bumped it, and then do you ever notice these? Okay, so then it bugs me about supernatural claims. Gavin guy knows I'm going on a rant. You can just tell. But the thing that bugs me with supernatural claims is like people that claim that there's this realm, there's a spirit realm, or there's another. It's like, by what mechanism are you determining this? You know what I mean? It's just like they're ghosts, so there must be a spirit world. Really? It seems like a leap. Yeah. Like even if you can demonstrate on some level that a ghost was real or spirits are real or something, that does not mean that everything you see in the Insidious movies is real, or poltergeists or whatever. How do you know that leap? It's just none of it makes any sense. Like, people just jump to these.
A lot of assumptions.
It's a lot of assumptions.
Let me read, because I think this fits in perfectly with what you guys are talking about here. This is part of the pillow example from one of the paragraphs in there. I said, we could even imagine that we have external security cameras and there's no sign of a human suspect to be seen. And I had already ruled out dog, because this is an apartment complex where dogs are not kept, they're not allowed. It's very rigidly enforced, and we know that none of the neighbors has a dog or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I said, is it now appropriate to introduce a supernatural agent? If so, which one? Should we invent one, or refer to one that has been proposed in the past by our culture or some other culture? How could we discern if it was one agent or a team of agents acting to destroy a pillow? Let's assume that house sprites have a particular distaste for red household ornaments, but they lack the power to disturb them on their own. Witches can bestow such powers on sprites, but are generally disinterested in the destruction of pillows. Shiva, the Hindu god, generally likes destruction no matter what the scope, so nudges the witch to empower the sprites in my home. There's no limit. If you can just imagine things that are possible explanations, you can just create them ad hoc, and without end.
Yes, I had the same discussion I have a group of friends that are coming over to game in a couple hours, and I had the same discussion. And there's this one guy in my group who is kind of on the younger side. And I'm blaming it on the whole millennials thing, but he doesn't like to be told that. He assumes that if you disagree with him, you're telling him that he's wrong, right? And there are some times, and he hates being told that he's wrong. And in some instances, he's just wrong. But the reason I bring that up is because we got to this discussion on, like, how did the universe arrive in its current state, right? Because first I had to correct them on saying, why is the universe here? And I got to get rid of the why question, explain that, blah, blah, blah. And I go, and everybody had like several different answers, right? Now, the problem here is that there's an assumption that if you don't accept, or at least the possibility of every scenario ever proposed, somehow you're closed-minded, right? So I tried to explain to them, what a sufficient explanation is versus what a necessary explanation is.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no. And it's like, no, there's no. I go, so you don't understand. We can posit, in this scenario, we can posit any number of explanations. Fucking pixies, universe creating leprechauns, whatever. But none of that matters if you can't demonstrate it's a necessary explanation, right? So, but they seem to think that that's what makes you closed-minded. And I'm just like, no, dude. Like you just cut away the stupid, or the non-established, right?
Yeah.
I mean, why would you jump to the most far-fetched conclusion first? And just because I don't immediately jump on your boat does not mean I'm closed-minded. It means that you need to demonstrate your fucking claim. Sorry, I'm done.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, well, the whole conversation with Mr. D started with his question is, why is there something rather than nothing?
Oh, just fucking shit.
And do I think, well, but I think at least it's not, telling me that salvation, that I need salvation and whatever. It's probably the point with the least assumptions that you could start with.
I mean, I think it's an interesting question. The problem is that their answer isn't a resolution, but they think it is, because their answer of, because there's a God who made stuff, is they ignore the fact that you can take a step back and say, okay, why is there a God rather than no God?
They're not asking the question.
And then we're in the exact same situation that we were before.
Well, you have to start somewhere.
They're not asking, right? Internally, that's a good point. They're not asking the question in terms of like, everyone's on a sort of a blank playing field and we're trying to get to an answer. They're saying that, but because they think they already have the answer.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's the whole point, is because, you don't have an answer to this question. Exactly. I do. It's the flying spaghetti monster. One thing that I wanted to bring up before, it's just a real quick note, Gavagai. You were mentioning how you appreciated in your conversation with Mr. D how the way he went about it and how he was asking kind of questions and whatnot. If you're interested in more conversation like that, there's this fella named Trey Jadlow. He does the same thing. He just kind of just facilitates the conversation, just asks you, what you think about X, Y, and Z. And then you kind of the conversation just flows.
Right.
Speaking of that fucking buffoon for a second, he hasn't really had any interaction with people lately, so I couldn't take apart what he said. But I did this fucking breakdown of his definition of sanctity of existence. And Gavagai, I know you deal with him and you've had this conversation with him before, but he always tries to get everyone to a point where it's especially with the moral argument, where it's because you're based it off the sanctity of existence, right? Like, especially if you say, I base it, I have the well-being and empathy, and he tries to equivocate that with sanctity of existence. But when he uses sanctity of existence, he's using it, and people go, yeah, that makes sense. They'll concede it, thinking that that's just another way of phrasing the same thing.
Yeah.
But that's not the case, because he has this weird definition of the sanctity of existence that he doesn't really. I would venture that if somebody would have to ask him every single time what that means, because what he said was, when someone asked him to define that, he says, to sanctify is to set apart, to be holy or special. Sometimes people take umbrage that I'm using a term that is generally associated with religion. They'll say, I don't want a religious term, so I'll just say special, So existence is special. Holy means to set apart. It means it's in a different category. That we all consider humanity to be special, or existence. That which is alive, that which is sentient, should be set apart as being different than a rock or something like that. Or I would say that all contingent existence must be holy in some way. In other words, it must have had some significance, or otherwise it wouldn't exist, because it is contingent and dependent on nature, and it wouldn't exist. Which sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook, right?
Yeah. So every time he says sanctity of existence, I just swap that out with deliciousness of cheeseburgers, and I got the same result.
Well, the question that would prompt me to ask is, well, is your son special? And And is he holy then? I mean, because or is this painting special? Does that make the painting? You're equivocating on terms that are not the
Right.
same.
Right.
And
He's saying sanctity is special.
Yeah.
And then he said, what's special? And he says holy or set apart.
Yeah.
So already his definition isn't the same. So if by conceding, when he says sanctity of existence for someone not in the know, and they go, yeah, that makes sense. Thinking it's like, just a recognition of well-being or overall or whatever.
Yeah.
He thinks he got you.
Right.
But that dishonest bastard isn't really telling you what he means by sanctity of existence.
No.
He'll go, well, don't you think existence is special? He'll answer with a question, and you go, well, yeah, to me.
Don't you think cheeseburgers are delicious?
I'm just saying that guy is so freaking dishonest, dude. I don't even understand how he cannot even see that in himself. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Fuck that guy.
Agreed. No, yeah.
Sorry,
but I don't think, or at least I don't anticipate Mr. D is going down that same path. Nothing in the conversation so far has seemed dishonest, and in fact, he's conceded way more than I thought he probably would, as far as what can be known, what where our limitations as people are, so on and so forth. But it'll be interesting to see his response. The last thing in that email that I sent was to kind of establish where he falls with regard to his belief confidence, and in part I'm curious to see what his response will be here, given that Uncle Wes's eyes are on this same discussion. That's
going to be, to me, I think that's going to make it for a less completely honest discussion.
Maybe
but
we'll see. So, but yeah, I said, where 0 is all doubt and no confidence, and 100 is all confidence and no doubt. Where does your belief in the existence of the Christian God lie on that continuum?
I mean, I think it's a good question to ask, because that's something that a person should reflect on. Mm-hmm. But I don't think you're going to get an honest answer.
Well, I mean, maybe.
I think just because there's other eyes on it, and even if it was just you and him, I don't think they're the 9 times out of 10 you're going to get an honest answer. And I know that's something that Anthony, I don't know his last name, the
Magnabosco.
Yeah, like the street epistemology guy will ask his people, and I do think it's a good thing to ask somebody just so that they reflect on it, hopefully reflect on it later on. Right. But I think in that moment, you're almost always going to get an answer, because they know they're being taped. So they want to present themselves in such a way because they think it's a good thing to be confident about these kind of things. So
yeah, but I mean, having watched just about all of Anthony Magnabosco's content on the street epistemology thing, there are people that will put themselves on the 50-50 line. They'll put themselves, random intervals in, between 50 and 100. And there are a lot of people that will say, I'm 100% confident. I have no doubt. And, I don't know, maybe it's because they're being filmed or maybe viewed by passersby or what have you. But I think a lot of, I know I would have said that even in my, if I had been sitting by myself, because I wanted to project confidence to someone and say, look, you can have this kind of confidence that Jesus is real, that Jesus is in your life. Our aunt, when I asked her, if the things that you believed about the God of the Bible and the Bible itself weren't true, would you want to know? And that's one of the things that I tend to ask a lot in these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, I think that's a good question.
Yeah. And she said yes, but it was a null a null point because she
'Cause
has
they
a
are true.
relationship. Well, she's got a relationship with Jesus and
Right.
talks to him all the time. Which, well, and
Sorry.
and I think when I responded to her, so this was actually the conversation that I didn't necessarily intend to talk about, but I think it's fine. But I said, you know, if you have contact with an omniscient being, could he disclose information to you that you don't have? Like, for example, what are the names of all of the people seated around me in my cube at work? Surely he knows, and he could tell, all kinds of things, and that would be evidence that would at least begin to convince me that maybe you had contact with somebody that knows more than you do, right? Because she wouldn't know those kinds of things. So,
But even if she did, going back to the pillow on the floor,
yeah.
you still start from a different standpoint, but at least that would be
It would be something.
a starting point.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it would be a thing that would be hard to explain with the information that we have at hand.
Yeah.
But
Would that mean that I'm gonna, suddenly start believing everything in the Bible and whatever? No, but
yeah.
But it would be some evidence.
Some evidence that she had a way to get information that was not likely to be available to her. But
yeah. So, but anyways,
how
ahead.
long has that been going on? Your conversation with
really over the course of the last month. I'm really frustrated that I can't find the beginnings of those conversations, and I thought that I stuck them in my folders in my email, but I am not able to produce them for now at this point for whatever reason.
Bad Gava guy.
Well, whatever.
He's got about 1 million conversations going on at any one point in time.
So March 11th was the last one that I sent to Mr. D, and that's the most recent one. I've had a couple other side conversations with Uncle Wes because he sent another email about somebody that was convinced that Jesus was real and did some stuff. I don't remember what it was, but I sent back the same kind of examples of, that I had sent to our aunt about those, that kind of issue. Well, just because somebody's convinced, don't you think that that's a measure? And can't people be convinced of things for bad reasons? And so, anyways, but I would like to proceed to the last conversation. So this is an example of a guy who I think has lived in a complete bubble, and who, interestingly, has also, I think, been very influenced by the God's Not Dead movies.
Nice.
So this is a gentleman who was a temp at the office where I work, and I have his term as a temp kind of expired, and he was just there. Basically, it was kind of a busy season for that department, and he was hired in to help, with the higher volume of stuff that they had to do. So, but anyways, I added him on Facebook because of interactions in the office. For example, he disclosed to someone that he thought that President Trump was going to get rid of all of the people who weren't Christians, not just Muslims. So he thought that was a good idea, and my coworker rightly, asked him some questions and and caused him some degree of problems and cognitive dissonance because of just her simple questions that she asked him. And I was intrigued and wanted to do that. I went to lunch with him while he was still working at our office, and disclosed to him there that I wasn't a believer, yada yada. We had a nice conversation, and I think he dialed down his conservatism to some degree, and also his I don't know, but it was a more cordial conversation, and he seemed less crazy in that conversation than.
I'm sorry, did you say how old this person was?
I
Roughly
didn't
speaking?
say. I'm. It's hard to say exactly. He's over 40.
Okay.
I'm confident to say that. But I don't know exactly.
It's funny because I mean, partially because he's a temp, but
Yeah.
I just had pictured like
Yeah.
a younger guy who was not
No.
hadn't
Yeah.
been
No.
out to the world at all.
No. But yeah, he's. I think he's super involved with his church. He goes to a local and Southern Baptist church. He went to school in seminary, so he got his degree is in like theology. Um, but he hasn't been like a pastor, I don't think, ever. So I don't know how, or why he ended up on the career path that he did after the fact. But in any case, and I don't want to disclose too much about him because I don't want to, I don't wish him any bad luck or any trouble.
Bad vibes. Don't want to send out
Yeah,
any
yeah,
bad
yeah, I
vibes
don't
You
out
don't
want
to
want
to
him.
any
send bad
negative
energy.
vibes into the universe.
Yeah, but in case someone ever stumbled on this and was able to identify him, I don't want to. I wouldn't wish anything bad on him. But so we've since then started up conversation on Facebook, and I didn't initiate it. I posted something about Trump that he chimed in on, and he criticized my my post and said that it was disrespectful to the president and that you shouldn't do that because it's unpatriotic. Well,
I think I did see that. Yeah.
yeah, and heathen chimed in on that one as well because why heathen?
Because I don't know, it was fun.
It was
Well,
obvious that it didn't make any sense.
well,
Mischievous is in my name, bro.
well, he had provided Bible verses to
Oh, I remember
yeah
this.
yeah to bolster his position that we should be respectful of the king. Essentially, is what it says in those Bible verses, I think. But
It would be weird if it said president in those Bible verses.
it would, but that would be more interesting, maybe a little, anyhow. I don't know. Anyways, so. So, like flip up this flap in 1780, and we'll reveal a secret word that will also apply, but keep it closed until then. If the Bible had little bits like that, and that it says president and nobody knew
Well,
that
at
we were
some
going to use
point,
this
there's going to
word.
be a translation that says president instead of king.
Well, not if we had the original text and it had these little flip up like advent calendar kind of deals.
Yeah, with chocolates inside.
Right. That would make the Bible so much better. Anyhow.
It was just loaded with chocolate.
And little flip up flaps
So
that's fun too, right?
Yeah.
Do you have that thread up, Gabby?
I'm looking at it. Not the Facebook thread.
Oh, okay.
Do you?
No, I'm looking
Okay.
for it.
Yeah, I posted a lot of stuff, and it's been a little while now. So
it's been a few days. So obviously you posted like a million things.
Yeah. So, but I took the conversation off of the public feed, for one, because I'm still not out to my wife's family, the majority of them anyways, and I didn't want him spilling the beans on my public Facebook page. But I've taken the conversation offline in a private message, and we've gone back and forth. It's been interesting. I mean, some of the conversation was like him saying, "Well, the reason that I disbelieve is because I was raised in the Assemblies of God," and how
He's saying that about you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that so his argument is, well, if I had been raised with
a
the
real
right
Christian
theology, real
right.
Christianity, that these things wouldn't be an issue.
It's funny because every single branch of Christianity says the
Might
same
say the
thing
same thing, yeah.
about all the other branches. I mean, if you should take that and then just show that to Wes and Mr. D,
Mr. D,
because
yeah.
they, as you mentioned, were deacons in our church, and just
Yeah.
inform them that if only you had been brought up in the correct version of Christianity, then you would still be a Christian.
See what you've done? Yeah, it's
Unfortunately, Uncle Wes, you have the wrong version of Christianity.
Yeah, they're not scriptural is his thing. Well, then the other thing that he was interesting, and this is kind of a side conversation that I tried to steer us back constantly, but part of me is also just very interested in these little kind of quirky things that Christians have. He starts telling, or he asked me, which branch of the Assemblies of God did I grow up in, and I was like, what are you talking about?
Like the specific name of the church, or
Well,
what?
yeah, well, that's what I wasn't sure. And then he said, well, there's two groups in the Assemblies of God, and one is just like Baptists, and the other one is not. And he said that the one that's just like the Southern Baptist Convention, has the same theology as that, is called is Assembly. He said it's called Assembly, or they call themselves Assembly. And the other branch, they call themselves Pentecostal. And I said, well, I went to a church, and Assembly or Assemblies of God was in the name of the church. We would have called ourselves part of the Assemblies of God. We were an assembly church, and but we also called ourselves Pentecostal and believed in I'm using scare quotes here, the gifts of the Spirit, and speaking in tongues and those kinds of things. And I said, I've never heard of what you're talking about, this split or whatever. I said it's one thing as far as I've ever heard. And the headquarters is in Springfield, Missouri for this denomination, blah, blah, blah. And I even went to the website and I pulled their kind of statements of faith, or their doctrinal truths, or whatever it is that they hold. And it's listed, it's listed in there, the infilling of the baptism of the Holy Spirit and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, this is what I learned from my textbook, my theology textbook, from back in school. And no, I don't have the textbook. He anticipated my request for evidence, or citation or whatever. So that was interesting. And I said, the difference between your knowledge about this subject and mine is that I grew up in this denomination, and I have citation direct from the source of the denomination website. And I said, yours is gained secondhand through a textbook that you no longer have, and your memory of what the textbook says, and your secondhand accounts from other people that are only somewhat related, or have had, or claim to have had some experience with these things, or whatever. So
it's like the Bible.
Yeah. So, but anyways, that's all. That was all just kind of side of some interest to me, just because it's so goofy. But I think it's an example of how people get locked into these ideas that they know something about something, but they're way wrong about it.
And he was way easily triggered. I mean,
oh yeah,
just by even the idea that you ask, again, you're asking a question, or kind of even unpacking what he said, or even kind of scrutinizing his position, means that you are, what did he say? Like, not that we were oppressing him. What did he say? We were like, be disrespectful to his beliefs, or
yeah.
something. And it's like, what kind of belief system do you have where it's impenetrable, not impenetrable, you're not allowed to even ask a question, or just examine it on some level?
Yeah, well, and I brought this out to him because what you replied on that thread was Bible versus LOL or something like
Oh
that.
yeah, because he was trying to defend his position with Bible verses, right? At
Right.
one point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And I was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what? That's why I was like,
And
why would he use Bible verses against someone that doesn't believe? Never mind. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Well,
Well,
to be fair, not everybody knows that Gavagai, but as I think you said, he should know, right?
yeah. Yeah. He would know. But
What other cool things did I say? I forget.
well, but I think
That
that's
was
the only
it.
thing that you said there. But the thing that he said in reply to that was the reason that I took it offline, because what he said next was that if you don't think that the Bible is something or other, the Word of God, or you don't have respect for it, then maybe you're in the wrong country.
Oh, I
And
didn't see that.
yeah,
Oh.
What
that
about?
is what he said. so
That's a
that's
weird position.
when I went on the side message and I was like, wait a minute, wait a minute, temp guy. I said, I'm wanting some clarification on this last thing that you said here. I said, do you think that people who don't believe in the Bible shouldn't be in this country? Which is, you know, uh, it suggests that what I had heard from the office, and I'd never asked him about this, about Trump getting rid of all the people who aren't Christians. They that they that they aren't welcome here, and
I'm gonna take a guess
rid
that
of.
this just went straight down to the "this is a Christian nation" line of argumentation.
Yeah, well, and that was
He does.
where he went with my coworker who questioned him, but he didn't take that route with me,
Hmm.
interestingly, because I think she was pretty quickly able to say, or to show him just by asking questions, they didn't label us with Christianity. They haven't. And I did ask him, I said, well, can you spell out how this works? And he was like, well, you just take the Bible in general, and these are, things like liberty and justice and what have you, can be derived from the Bible as a whole.
Not
You can't take
liberty.
specific you can't take specific verses and point to specific verses.
No, I mean, you can have a bunch of laws and whatever, and say, okay, this is this is justice, according to this book, but you don't get liberty out of anything in there. There's no way to derive liberty from the Bible.
Yeah. Well, there you can talk about liberty in a like a spiritual sense, um, because you're free from sin. So you're free to not do stuff that you want to do, but that God doesn't like,
Right,
or
but
someone has said God doesn't like. Yeah.
but that has nothing to do with the government.
Liberty.
Got it. Nailed it.
So, but he kept kind of steering away from that topic and that end of things, which I would have liked to pursue a bit more, because I think it's, like I said, I kind of like to take some of these softer targets that are not threatening to your worldview necessarily, or at least not as a whole. Like I think he could probably, come to accept that our country was, designed as a secular nation without having radical change in his perspective of who he was, and whatever. I could be wrong, but
Yeah.
I
On the one hand, I think you're
target.
on the one hand, I think you're right, but on the other hand, like, because I think so much of these people's identities is wrapped up in the group think and the zeitgeist of their current group, and so that being a big part of that zeitgeist, it's a brick in the building, and like taking that out, they're not comfortable with it.
True, but at some point, if your intention is to actually make a difference and open somebody's eyes at the very least, if not change their mind, you've got to make them uncomfortable on some level. And
Oh
and
yeah,
it's
I'm
yeah.
not saying you shouldn't do it. I'm just saying that I think that there's very few things, unfortunately, that you can just take out like that won't start to that they will be willing to give you.
Sure.
But
Yeah,
I mean, and it depends on the person and like how entrenched they are into
right.
that zeitgeist.
Yeah. But he kept turning it to how it was that I came to disbelieve Christianity. One of the comments that he made in the thing was, sometime I would like for you to explain how you came to the conclusion that Christianity is false. What triggered that? What proof did you find that God's word is false? And I don't know why he capitalizes God, all caps. But you believe that Judaism is false. Can you prove that God does not exist? And I replied that I don't think that any religion is true. And I've tried to explain why proving that God exists is not a, productive, proving that he does not, is that what I said? It does not exist. It's not a productive endeavor. And then, and so I work for a nonprofit, and I'm sure I've shared this before, but he was, and our particular organization has had some roots and ties with a particular brand of Methodist church, I think. But it's, for all purposes, it's a secular organization now, and it's like 70 years old. It still has some loose ties with some of these church organizations, or some, kind of permanent membership on the board. But the organization's mission is related to hunger and poverty, and kind of sustainable environmental practices. And this guy is trying to tell me that it doesn't make sense for me to be there. I think in part he doesn't think that I should be able to have any kind of moralities or whatever.
You're not allowed.
Values. Yeah. And so that doesn't make sense to him. So when I told him, well, I do have those values, and I asked him I said if you came to the conclusion that there was no God, I said, do you think that you would completely lose all moral value, and that you wouldn't care for people anymore? And he said, oh yeah, undoubtedly that was the case, which I don't think
that's
probably
somewhat doubtedly.
Yeah.
And then by all means, keep on believing.
Well,
if it were true.
Yeah. But and he rejects the idea that I was ever a believer, which, because he is a Calvinist, and in that tradition. So what else?
He's such a weird dude.
He is, and he got kind of snippety with me a few times. Like early in the conversation, he was saying that I was harassing him, and that his response to me about whether or not non-believers or people of other religious beliefs are welcome in the country. His response was, well, yes, they're welcome here, because that's part of the Christian Judeo-Christian values is welcoming other people, but that Christians weren't welcome in this country.
What?
So, well, and there's this kind of duality. Like, this is a Christian nation, and the majority of people are Christians, and if you don't like it, get out. But then at the same time, we're persecuted, and we're whatever. So which is it? Are you this persecuted minority, or are you a majority, and
you're in
have
control?
This, yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that a lot. That's a good point, because you hear a lot where they go, 70 to 80% of the people are Christian in this country. This is a Christian nation. And then you got guys like fucking Matt Slick that are like, we're being persecuted, or Trey Jadlow, we're being persecuted. And it's like, What the fuck?
Well, or like, and he's kind of doing some similar things that G-Man does. Is, on when it's convenient, I'm going to lump all of these people into Christianity and say that they're all Christians. But then when it gets down to the nuts and bolts, I'm going to exclude all these people and say only the Southern Baptist Convention has it right.
So only like
they're
10%.
Yeah,
even less than that.
Only those people are the real Christians.
Yeah.
So, but
fucking crazy person.
Yeah, I didn't get involved in that at all, but I did read a few things. But like it was ludicrous right from the start of that, because he's basically saying that, because like you said, initially kind of a criticism of Trump, and I don't remember what the original post was. But then his response was essentially like, don't criticize the president, whoever the president is, because that's unpatriotic. But it's like, wait a minute. I think I can recall somebody who might currently be the president criticizing the last president. And even if that weren't the case, what about Rush Limbaugh? What about Bill O'Reilly? What about all of Fox News, all of talk radio? All of these people were unpatriotic a couple months ago.
Yeah, and I pointed out to him the Tea Party and but he said that
that's different because.
Well, no, but he didn't say that. What he said was conservative Christians would think that it's rude and inappropriate to criticize the president, no matter who it was. So I said, what are all these people? These people aren't conservatives, or they're not Christians, or they're not Christians and conservatives. What?
Hey, I've seen quite a bit lately in the past couple of months of conservatives coming out and saying they didn't ever criticize Obama. Like,
what?
I don't know that that's true. I kind of feel like that's probably not the case. They personally didn't criticize Obama, and they think that other people shouldn't. They should give Donald Trump a chance. I've seen that quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I don't believe you. That's kind of the thing, is I kind of don't think you were impartial for 8 years. And now you suddenly have you want everybody else to be impartial, but
I guess what amazes me is he seems to take such this hard stance, like comes across as kind of like this outspoken, kind of a tough guy exterior, and then like you finger poke him and he just falls apart like immediately. Like if you just
keep your fingers off of him.
Right. Yeah. When I pointed out the fact that, he was saying, well, Christians can't talk about their faith in public without being criticized or whatever. And I said, well, I had seen him on a broadcast of his church's service or whatever. I was like, you were up there on TV, broadcast TV, worshiping your God and attending a church service. I said, how is that being, in what way are you being limited or whatever? What part of your worship or your expression are you being hindered from doing? And his response was, well, we're being criticized. And I said, well, we're in this conversation because you criticized something that I said. I said, so are you allowed to criticize, but other people are not allowed to criticize what you say?
What's wrong? My question is, what's wrong with criticizing? Like, I don't understand that whole concept. Just blows my mind. I cannot wrap my head around the idea that you cannot question my position.
Yeah.
Like I had a friend at work where, and I think I may have shared this because I always reshare my stories, but we had this conversation and she said that my beliefs, because they're beliefs, you can't question them. You can't, because they're mine and they're personal and you're not supposed to question beliefs and stuff. And I'm like, well, what about the KKK? And then she goes, well, that's different. What? And I'm like, you just finished telling me that we had this 5-minute dialogue about how beliefs should be respected and never questioned, just on the basis that someone's beliefs are personal and they're theirs. And then you go on and tell me that I can't use the KKK as an example or as a different example because you don't like them. And she goes, well, that's just an extreme example. And I'm like, yes, exactly. But it doesn't mean it's not relevant. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean it's not analogous to what you're saying. And so there's this idea that you can't question the perceived good worldviews, I guess. The bad ones you can criticize all, to hell. No pun intended, but I'm just saying, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's this weird double standard where it's like, if it's accepted generally, it's okay. You can do this because this is the good worldview. I don't know. It's just the hypocrisy just blows my mind. First of all, and then the second part that blows my mind is they don't see it.
Right. Well, I mean that a lot of them train themselves not to see it. I mean I mean Christians in particular. I mean I don't know if you were referring to a Christian in that instance, but I mean they reinforce this idea of persecution all the time. So they only see the things where, and they interpret it in that way too. So if I'm trying to think of an example other than like a gay wedding cakes or something, but anytime a Christian is not or like pharmacists who are Catholic or whatever, and they don't want to be able to or don't want to give out birth control or whatever, they only see the one side of it of their own beliefs and not the other person, because and they see these stories come up and so they only see because that's what gets brought to their attention, the when the Christians are on the wrong end of the stick, as it were.
Yeah, but you know what? I wasn't even being abrasive or anything. It was just questions, right? It wasn't even like really anything that was bad, because we were at work, so it wasn't like I was like, how do you know that? Can you demonstrate that? I wasn't even getting all hardcore. It was just I was pointing out that there is a certain double standard that she is, I overheard a conversation between her and another friend. And we didn't actually speak for 2 months after that, to be honest with you. Like, we ignored each other for like 2 months because it was that offensive to this person that her belief system would be even on the table. And it's like, well, how are you ever going to learn? I mean, how are you just so comfortable, sitting on your laurels, for lack of better terminology? I mean, is it just easier for you just to sit there and assume you're right?
Well, I mean, I do think it does matter how old a person is too. I don't know how old this person you were talking to was, but except you're talking about life investment, So the older a person is, I think the harder it is for them to come to the point where they say, hey, you know what, this isn't right, or even to allow themselves to consider the possibility that's not right, because they've spent their life, investing time and brain space and credulity into this.
Yeah, I get it, but
I'm not saying it's right.
No, I get it.
I'm just trying to explain how people can get to that point, or
it's
why
just weird
they
to me
are like that.
That people claim how do people claim that they're not judgmental or they're open-minded or this? To be open-minded, right? Because as an atheist, I get accused, or a skeptic especially, I get accused of being closed-minded, right? Because I don't believe in karma and psychics and ghosts and all that bullshit as well. So part of being open-minded is the ability to question your own position.
It should be, but
you know what I mean? It's like right. I'm open-minded to anything except my own position, and it's like, well, you don't see the problem there? Like, I just don't.
Yeah, I mean, typically what people mean when they say they're open-minded is they're willing to take in new things, but not necessarily to jettison things that they
already hold.
Yeah.
But without examination of that, how would they know if they're ever right?
Well, they won't.
So let me read this portion of the conversation I had with Temp Guy, because
you found it.
Yeah, well, I had this conversation.
Oh, okay.
But this was, like I said, this was the offline thing. So he had been telling me, well, that I didn't do salvation right when I was a believer, and that you have to have this calling from the Holy Spirit. And and I asked him, well, how do you know that you've received? Because he affirmed that he had received this call. So he has salvation because he's got his two-pronged thing under his belt, of you have to believe that the gospel is true.
He's got two prongs under his belt.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
that didn't come out quite right, but so he believes that the gospel is true, and he's had this supernatural special call from the Holy Spirit. And I said, well, how do you know you've received a call from a God? And he said, well, God is the only God that can do such. Well,
what?
Yeah,
how do you know?
The call, right? The call is as plain as the nose on your face. You can't miss it. Some call it the conviction of the Holy Spirit. I believe you know the answers, and you just wish to argue or confuse. I said, you are confident that this is true. I get that. Is there any way you could test that conviction? How do you recognize it? And whatever the experience entails, that it was not actually from the source you believe. Like, so could you test to see whether or not it was from that source? And he said, why would I want to do that? That's testing God. I can't do that. I said, if you have no way to verify that what you are believing is true, how can you be so confident that it is actually true? And he said, well, since you can't prove that God doesn't exist,
Jesus.
Yeah, hold on. That shatters your belief in atheism. What you believe can't be proven. Christianity can be proven by history, and God has been proven by science. So that's the level of the conversation with this guy. And he also
you just got destroyed, is what you're
right.
saying.
Exactly. Earlier in the conversation, he also explained to me that he asked, do I know what history is? And I was like, I don't remember exactly what I said, but the response from him was, no, history is it's derived from his story, right? Yeah. So he's got all of these things, and at one point he asked me to prove that God is not, or prove that God is dead, and whatever. So
oh God,
God's not dead; he's really alive.
Yeah.
Oh.
So so I wrote him this kind of a lengthy thing, but I won't read it all here. But specifically addressing his comments that I tried to prove that Yahweh doesn't exist, and also addressing the issue of atheism and his statement that I have a belief in atheism.
Oh, jeez.
So, but I haven't heard back from him since then on these issues. So
he's like a walking Christian meme. You know what I mean? Like, he just has all these memes in his head that he just...
Right.
Oh, I'm already irritated just hearing it.
Yeah. But, that is exactly the kind of person that needs some exposure to other people. Like, when he was at our office, he was just dumbfounded that there were people that were Muslims and non-believers and liberals there. I think he thought it was like his church, but just geared specifically toward feeding hungry people or whatever, or helping hungry people to feed themselves, I should say, because
talk about living in a fucking echo chamber. Like, where do you live? In like a closet? Like, there are other. Is it that striking to him? There are other people that believe differently than he does, or don't believe in what he believes in. Period. Like it's almost like they're like other people of different religions or atheists. They're like fucking mythical creatures. Like you would see, like, wow, they really exist. Outside of my
There's
hometown.
a centaur in the office.
Right, exactly. I'm just like, what the fuck? I would, God, I would love to speak to this guy like every day.
Well, you can't have him. He's mine.
I know. I mean, I would love. He would never come on the show, right?
No, yeah, and I don't think I would put him on the show even if he was interested, because he would just, I think he would completely shut down, and I would probably lose contact with him.
Yeah, the other thing I don't understand is the shutting down thing, right? I understand this isn't to me one of those normal situations like we talked about earlier when we said, well, we agree to disagree or whatever. This is one of the situations where he's the kind of person that's like, if you have a position that's different than mine, I'm done.
Yeah,
The guy that Gava guy's talking to?
Yeah.
I don't think he's done that.
What? Are we talking about the same guy? Well, I mean, maybe not to you in your private thing, but I mean, he seemed to me to be less receptive in the public Facebook.
Well, yeah, maybe. Yeah, well, and maybe that's. But I think he doesn't do a whole lot of Facebook, so he's. I don't know. I think he didn't want to get into a big discussion on there. He just wanted to condemn what my post, and for me to be like, "Oh, okay, I didn't know."
Seems legit. Like
even to get back to the underlying like criticism of like being unpatriotic. Who gives a shit?
Right? Yeah, there's
like,
that.
Like that didn't even touch that, but like
No.
I mean, like when it's like we're already starting, 10 stories beyond where this should be starting, but like, okay, we'll start here, I guess.
Yeah.
Patriotism.
Yeah, and I did mention to him that like the founding fathers were.
I did see that. Yeah,
we're critical of King George, and if they hadn't been, we would still be under British rule. I was like, I said something about was their criticism acceptable or not acceptable, and were they patriotic or unpatriotic for their criticism and whatever and rebellion against the king, and he like gave this cop out thing about how he wasn't living in their time, so he can't judge them. And I said, well, you're not living in the time with the German Nazi or the Jewish Holocaust. I said, are you able to criticize that?
Well, then you
can't criticize anything that's happened 5 seconds ago.
Right.
But then he was like, if I remember correctly, wasn't he then like saying, well, I am not a Nazi or something like like as though if I remember correctly, he like tried to either tried to turn it or didn't understand the criticism and was like saying that like you were comparing him to a Nazi or something.
Yeah, no, and I tried to clarify and say, look, I'm just trying to establish a baseline of when you can criticize something that's in history and when you can.
Yeah.
This guy is the greatest person like ever. Like, can you in your private time just get him to say more dumb stuff and then like share it with us? Because that would be awesome.
Yeah, but do it on your own time, Gabby, guys.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you got to know what's going on, right?
Open a Patreon for this. Please support my conversation with Temp Guy.
Just throw out like a bomb or something, like babies have no souls or something. Like, you just make him go crazy and then like just tell us what he says. I've been scrolling for like 15 minutes and like trying to find this feed, and I hate that you can't look.
Well, you made it unpublic, right?
No, it's on there somewhere.
Yeah, like my part.
You took it off.
No, he took it to private. In other words, he private messaged him.
Yeah, I private messaged him like the conversation. I moved the conversation to the private message
because he was being a pussy.
Well, because right,
getting into the religious stuff that Gavin didn't want to get into.
Oh, not
publicly.
I meant that guy because he is a big kind of whiner though.
A little bit, yeah.
He's a little. What the? Come on. I understand you got to be sort of nice, but he is kind of a one. He definitely got a little sand in the vagina during that conversation. That's all that I'm saying.
I understand that hurts. It's a sensitive area.
Well, he's got 2 prongs down there, so
he's one of those guys that's like easily triggered because he's living in a very small bubble, apparently.
He is, yeah. And there were several times where he got short with me, even in this conversation. Like we'd be going back and forth, and it was like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and then, he'd be like, "Good night, sir. Good night." I said good night. I'd be like, "Well, you can answer the question when you want. I just asked this question, and I was interested in your answer, whether you give it to me tonight or whenever." But
I said good night, sir.
Yes, I will pray for you.
Telling you, sand in the vagina. Just go. Well, when you're off your period, you can fucking answer my question.
Oh, do we want to? I would like to at least make reference to that last the TED Talk thing, and I think we're pretty much wrapped up then.
Yeah, we got about 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
So TED Talk away, Gabby.
Well, it's just the
Westboro thing, right?
Yeah. So one of the children from the Westboro church, she had grown up in the church and had participated in their protests and things. She gave a TED Talk about how she left the Westboro church, and I thought it was really good. It wasn't. I don't know what her religious status is right now. If she considers herself a believer or not. I know that, like, what is it? There's that one Phelps guy that's has come out as an atheist and and spoke at like a Reason rally and stuff. She didn't get into any of that in this TED Talk, but it was just about how just dialoguing with people on Twitter. She would post these tweets that were, fags go to hell or whatever. And
she was, if I remember correctly, I think she was like representing, like she was put in charge of kind of being the public face of the Westboro Baptist Church at a certain point in time. So she was responding to like things that would happen, in the country, and people would respond to the things that she would say.
Yeah. And one of the things, she said, well, people would give kind of some vitriolic things at the beginning, but there would be a dialogue, and through that dialogue, through the conversation, as people opened up and they became acquaintances with her through this internet conversation, and would even come and visit and see her when she was protesting in their city or whatever, and how it humanized these other people, and I think that humanized the enemy, and it's a powerful thing, and it's been kind of floating around. People, if anybody's watching our show or listening to our show, they may or may not have seen it, but it's worth looking up if you haven't seen it. And I think it just is kind of a testament to the fact that having conversations with people who disagree with you is important, and can change people's minds and attitudes. If nothing else, even before she changed her mind that her church was wrong, her perspective of the other people in the world that were around her that she previously thought were just evil and wicked people, it cast a different light on them. The fact that they were able to hold cordial and civil conversations, and actually cared enough about her to come and see her and greet her and have conversations about other things. So that's what I would like to cap this off with, is just go out, have conversations, be kind, and be willing to listen and engage with people.
Yeah, I mean, as much of a dickhead as I come across, I mean, I really do like to fucking talk to people about stuff. But, my ultimate goal, is to, on some level, inspire some sort of critical thinking, because it really does trouble me on some level that people just believe things inherently, or they were raised to believe stuff. And the idea that questioning it doesn't really come into play, or doesn't come into play in a way where it matters. I know people that have said, oh, but I've had my doubts and I've questioned things, this and that. I'm like, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, right? But I'm a little skeptical of people that have already been indoctrinated to having the tools themselves to get out. It's kind of on the rare side, I find.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, in a way, to become skeptical is really kind of to fight, ironically, to fight, you know, millions of years of evolution, because most of our knowledge is built on the knowledge that came before us, and that's how, as a species, we've grown. We learn from the generation that comes before us, and a lot of that is just kind of like, because most of the information that we get from our parents and our social surroundings is useful, is either useful or irrelevant.
Don't you mean evolution? Sorry.
Yes, I do mean evolution. But so we're kind of having to fight that instinct to just take on whatever we've been given by, in particular, our parents. But I mean, and I think that's the struggle, is getting over that hurdle.
Turtle.
Yeah.
Says the turtle.
And on that note, I think we're going to wrap it up for this week. We ended on a positive note, which is very rare for this thing. Anybody?
Oh yeah, we better quick come up with something else.
Yeah.
Arcane logos.
Fuck. Oh, fuck arcade logos.
There.
It's
That's
so long. It's been so long. I feel better, though. I honestly do. I gotta say that too. Fuck arcane logos and trade giant logo. Fuck yourself. But that could make that's a lot of fucks in the two-prong sentence there. Gabby, do you have any?
Those prongs under your belt now.
I know Turtle doesn't do the Google Plus thing. Are you gonna be in any hangouts or doing anything?
Me, no.
No. All right.
No.
Your mission is to talk to crazy person.
It's a dying scene.
It is kind of. All right, everybody. Thanks for showing up. See you next time. Bye.